You just press play on the Last Breath Hunt Cast, home of the Huntroversy. We're here to entertain, educate, and engage. And in case you didn't know, you only live once. But if you do it right, once is enough. Don't waste it.
Three, two, one, here we go. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us on the newest episode of the Last Breath Hunt Cast. Today is going to be a fun one, and I have the opportunity to sit down with an expert in thermal optics. So I'm going to be talking with Jamie Hoffamn of Dark Knight Outdoors. He is the owner, and there's actually a shop in the Quad Cities. I recently found out about him, reached out to him, and they were super excited to come down and talk to us. So today, if you are thinking about getting into the thermal game, or you have a thermal and you have some questions about it, or just anything that involves thermal optics, whether it's a scope, a monocular, binocular, scanner, you name it, we're going to cover it. So Jamie's going to break down a lot of the common questions. If you don't know your way around a thermal, he's going to discuss those from A to Z. Then we're going to go into some of the new things that's in the industry, kind of where the industry is trending, and then go over some of his honorable mentions and some of the best scopes and scanners that he believes are on the market. So I'm excited. I have been thermal hunting this is my second season doing it. I got involved because of my friends out west. They're slowly becoming my most expensive friends, just because Shane and Robert have big boy jobs, and with that comes big boy hobbies. But man, I'll tell you what, once you get into the thermal game, it just unlocks a whole other realm of opportunities for an outdoorsman. So I'm excited to sit down, talk to him, and go over this, because I think I'm going to learn stuff myself being relatively new to the thermal industry. Now, that being said, we got to pay the bills and thank the people that make this podcast possible. Of course, Badlands Gear is a title sponsorship of our podcast. We're proud to be working with them. And I'll tell you what, man, speaking of coyote hunting, I've been doing a lot of hunting in this last couple weeks. And if you're in the Midwest, you know it was bitter cold. The Pyre jacket and bibs, dude, they're perfect, because what I like about it is that I cannot layer super heavy and still throw on that system and be comfortable. Because when I'm making these coyote stands at night, I'm typically, 20 minutes, 30 minutes is kind of a long stand at night. And you don't really have to walk very far either when you're thermal hunting at night, or at least the spots that I hunt, I don't have to. So what's nice is, like I said, I don't have to layer a whole bunch. I'm not extremely hot when I'm in my truck in between properties. And, I zip open the vents on my bibs. When I'm in the truck, I take my jacket off. When I get to my stand, I'll throw my jacket on. I'm nice and comfortable. The wind doesn't cut through me, and I'm set. Long-winded ad for Badlands, but I'm telling you, man, the stuff works. Second is Tompkins Taxidermy. Michael and Wayne, top-notch guys. I don't know how many times I'm going to say this. I'll probably say it another 100 times. They are great people to work with, and their taxidermy is just rock star, absolutely amazing. Kevin, Wayne's cousin, shot a giant 2 nights ago, and Michael shot an absolute hammer last night. So those boys are on fire. Wayne, we're still waiting on you to fill your tag. But anyway, Tompkins Taxidermy, check them out. Last is Moultrie Mobile. Been working with those guys for a long time. We have come to I have come to really put an emphasis on trail cameras, both traditional and mobile. I mean, I got hooked when I was at a young age with trail cameras, and then all of a sudden that snowballed into it is a necessary part of my regiment when I'm hunting whitetails, without a doubt. So Moultrie and Moultrie Mobile are some of the front runners. They're the proprietary guys that are in the trail camera market. Dan was one of the first ones to come out with a trail camera, and they've created a brand that's been long lasting. So again, Badlands, awesome gear, Tompkins Taxidermy, you can't beat it, and Moultrie Mobile. So now I'm going to introduce Jamie. We're going to get him on the podcast. He's actually coming over to the shop. He's going to be able to check out my situation and setup here. If you guys haven't seen it, you can check it out on Whitetail Cribs. I have it's not a barn dominium. It's an addition that I put onto my home that's strictly for hunting and hanging out. So I'm pretty excited to show them to him, and then we're going to get into this podcast and break down thermals. All right, I'm in the shop. I have Jamie here with me, and he is freaking loaded. He brought a whole bunch of thermals that we're going to play with afterwards. But before we get into it, Jamie, introduce yourself, talk about Dark Knight, and give them your 3 to 5 minute commercial.
Well, I'm Jamie Hoffamn with Dark Knight Outdoors. We're a smaller thermal dealer. We focus primarily on thermal scopes, and we started in the business to help other hunters out that are in the market for a thermal, don't maybe understand all the different specs and so forth, and we just want to help out other hunters that might be looking for the best thermal scope in their budget range, and go from there.
So it's you and Bill, correct?
Correct. Yep. We've got me and Bill. I'm actually the owner of Dark Knight Outdoors, and Bill is actually our product specialist. He does a lot of hunting and a lot of hands-on with the thermals. He goes out, puts them on his gun, sights them in, goes out, hunts with them, does all that kind of stuff. So he really knows the intricate details on all the different thermals out there. So at least the ones that we carry anyway.
Right. So perfect. So if you call Dark Knight Outdoors, DNO, kind of is my acronym.
Sure.
You're going to either talk to you or Bill, correct?
Correct. Yep. We're the only two that answer the phone, and on any particular day, you could get me or Bill and go from there.
Perfect. So you guys can be found on the internet?
Yep, at www.darknightoutdoors.com. We also have a Facebook page that is just Dark Knight Outdoors.
Good.
And then we also do host another page for hunters that are looking to maybe trade or buy or sell any thermal scopes, which is just called Thermal Buy and Sell.
Oh, that's you guys.
That's us.
Oh,
yep.
man.
Yep.
All
So
right. That's a big page.
Yeah.
Or
Yep.
group.
Bill actually takes care of most of our social media, so he's on there constantly, and with the exception of trying to keep all the different, unfortunately, scammers out there off the pages and so forth. We really try to keep that page as clean as possible. And then just for people that are looking to sell a thermal, or maybe they're looking to trade up, but don't really want to take in a trade-in value from a dealer and go from there. So.
Well, so you guys have a pretty good presence then.
Yeah. Yep. We do a lot of different trade-ins. We've got a lot of different thermals. We carry anything from AGM all the way up to Envision, Trigicon, iRay, Bearing Optics, Pulsar, all the major brands. So,
right. So let's get into this. So
sure.
For the listeners, already told them, this is going to be kind of a break it down for thermals, because I'm probably going to learn. I know I am from you.
Sure.
So you take it. Talk about thermal specs. And so a guy's shopping for a thermal rig, whether it's a scope or a scanner, there's some specs in there that you kind of need to know what they are. Some of them are way more important than the others.
Sure.
So get into it. Knock them dead.
Yeah. A lot of people that call they've been doing a lot of research on the internet, and they see a lot of different specs out there, and there is a ton of specs when it comes to thermal scopes. So it does get a little bit on the confusing side at times. One of the main specs that people look at is the sensor resolutions out there. You're going to have anything from a 256 by 192 to a 384, 288. There's a 640 by 480. And even one of the companies has come out with a 1280 scope right now,
right.
which is one of the kind of the top end, also one of the most expensive scopes out there on the market right now. But with the different sensor resolutions that you've got out there, it just depends on obviously your budget and how much clarity you really want to get out of the scope. But it also primarily has to do a lot with what type of hunting you're doing. So that's going to be a big factor as well too. So a lot of times when customers give us a call, we try to first find out what kind of hunting they're doing, what kind of range that they're looking at for taking their shots, so on and so forth. For example, a guy might be looking for just a scope to go out and shoot coons out of a tree with.
Sure.
And really just about any thermal scope will work well for that. You're going to want something with a lower base magnification and so forth. But when you really get into the different sensor resolutions, that's primarily one of the main things that people look at for clarity. The higher the resolution, typically the better clarity that you're going to get.
So talking about, like, you're saying some numbers, that's kind of like the box, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we've done a lot of film and some camera gear podcasts here. It's kind of like the difference between like standard HD and 4K. is a
Exactly.
good analogy there.
Very good. Yep. When you look at your different TV resolutions, if you remember back all the way back when you had a tube TV,
Oh, yeah.
it was a very low resolution versus now you get into the high definition. Some of the stuff went kind of like your DVD quality, and then they went to Blu-ray, and then they, come out with this 4K and 8K type of stuff. Kind of putting it in layman's terms that way, 8K would be kind of like your iRay 1080 that they've got out right now, kind of the higher end. In the middle, to the high end would be your 640, and then kind of on your lower end is your 256s and your 384s. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with a 384 by 288, just depends on what you're doing with it. There's a lot of other things, other factors that go into that, like how many microns the
right
pixel
into
pitches.
So talk about microns.
So microns, primarily you're going to see two different numbers out there. You're going to see a 12 and a 17. And unfortunately, most people call and they go, well, isn't the 17 better than the 12? And it's kind of like a golf score. The lower the number, the better. It is actually the pixel pitch and how close together the pixels can be inside the sensor. However, the 17s can also have a more a contrast to them, so they can actually produce a better picture. And then it also has to do with your base magnifications, how well you're, if you're in a 17, your base magnifications, and then also the size of the scope that you're going to get when you have a stronger pixel pitch. Okay. So for example, a 12 micron, you can get in a much smaller unit. Sure. Then your 17s are going to be kind of your larger units out there on the market, and go from there. The microns can have a lot to do with it, but when you talk microns, there's some companies out there that are starting to talk more about the net D, if you will, or NETD. The net D is kind of a combination of what your pixel pitch is, what your sensor resolution is, and how well that scope will actually do in higher humidity situations. Okay. So they use the net D, they rate it in millikelvins. Okay, so if you have a lower number again on the millikelvins, typically the better picture image quality you're going to get, especially in that higher humidity, because humidity really is the kind of the demon of thermal scopes out there. Fog, humidity, rain, snow, whatever, anything that is higher humidity. There's some scopes out there that perform way better in higher humidity, and then there's other ones that don't perform near as well. And really, if you get that lower millikelvin, that 25 millikelvin, Pulsar advertises that quite a bit on their different scopes. It's going to give you a much better clarity through high humidity, fog, rain, that type of thing. So
those three numbers, your sensor resolution, your microns, and your D, what was it?
Net D.
Net D.
Yep.
Those really control your image clarity and crispness, correct? So, okay, so, when I was looking at this, I was kind of told like another big part of those combined, well, specifically microns and sensor resolution, was going to be your animal identification distance. That's not necessarily zoom, just being able to tell, because correct me if I'm wrong, most of your scopes, when you digitally zoom, it cuts that resolution in half every time you do that. So if you have a 640, you automatically go to like that 384 and then that 256, right? Every time you zoom in.
Correct. Every time you zoom in, you're going to cut down the resolution on any thermal scope out there. So unlike a traditional day scope, you've got a very variable range of magnifications, right? With a thermal scope, your base magnification is going to be your only optical magnification that you actually have.
Right. Okay. Everything else is digital.
Everything else is digital. So I kind of put the analogy there that if you are on a cell phone and you take a picture and then you blow that picture up, it's going to start to get grainy or digitized. It's going to get blocky. It's going to get pixelated. Same thing you're doing in a thermal scope anytime that you zoom in. And typically, I will say most of the thermal scopes out there will be either a 2x, a 3x, 4x magnification that you can do. when you are doing the base magnification of, say, a 3x and you go to 2x, you're actually doubling that. So it's not that you're going just to a 2x. You're actually taking, now you're at a 6 power because your base magnification is a 3. That, if you're in a 640 by 480, you're automatically going to drop your resolution down to 320 by 288. So that is one of the biggest things that you're doing is it's going to get a little grainier the more you bump it up. Your base magnifications is the most important part of what type of hunting you're doing. If you are down south and you're doing a lot of hog hunting, they usually prefer the lighter base magnifications because you're going to get a bigger field of view.
Right.
So field of view becomes very important, especially if you're hog hunting, because typically if you're hog hunting, and I know there's a lot of different types of hog hunting that you can do, but typically they're shooting anywhere from 50 yards, maybe even closer, maybe even further out to maybe 100, 120 yards. But they want a really wide field of view because, as you've seen with all the different videos out there, you shoot the first hog and what happens is the rest of them run. So, and you're going to be trying to pick that, those other targets up in your thermal and then being able to shoot them on the run. So you want that wider field of view. Now for coyote hunting, I would say my favorite base magnification is like a 3.0 or right in that range. There's a few companies out there that have like a 2.9 or even jump up to a 3.5, which is a really good coyote base magnification because you are looking at a much smaller animal than a hog. You are also typically looking at a lot larger distances that you're going to be shooting those out. We've got guys that are shooting, out to 300, 350, 400 yards, which gets more difficult. That kind of gets into more your tripods and stuff like that.
Well, and the whole point of hunting them at night so that you bring them in close.
Right. Yeah, you definitely want to try to bring them in as close as you can. But typically you might have one that hangs up at 200 or 300 yards. And your 3-power base magnifications work really well for that, just to be able to identify and go from there. As far as identification ranges go, there's stuff out there that ranges from 1,200 yards to 3,000 yards. But when we talk identification, a lot of times, or just even detection ranges, you're talking a human-sized target. And at least being able to see just a white dot on the screen. So that's what they're kind of talking more with your detection ranges. They do talk a little bit more about identification ranges and what you can do to identify. But a lot of people think that like with a Gen 3 night vision scope, for example, you're going to be able to actually see the fur and the face and with detection ranges, you're really detecting out basically a signature and by how they move as well. So you're going to be able to see the shape of the animal that you're doing and then how they're moving. Now, the closer that they come in, you get a lot more detail and so forth in the thermal scope and go from there.
So the magnification, really the important factor there, if you're looking at one, is just like you said, what type of hunting you're doing.
Right.
Then from there, that can also, it sounds like to me, it's question one when shopping for a thermal is, what are you doing with it?
Sure.
That's, and am I right to say that?
Yep. What type of hunting are you doing? Are you typically doing hog hunting or are you coyote hunting? Sometimes we will get the guys that, we're doing both.
Sure.
If you're doing both, then it kind of comes down to what are you doing the most. If you're down south, it's primarily hog hunting, but they will do a little bit of coyote hunting as well. And when they do the coyote hunting, if you're really doing a lot of hog hunting, go with that lighter base magnification and then bump your scope up for doing the coyote hunting and go from there. Now, you are going to cut down your resolution and so forth, but at the end of the day, it's still a very good image for doing what you want to do and for coyote hunting.
And that's what I found. So like I've got AGM Rattler TS50 640, 2.5 base mag, and like I've played around. 5 power isn't that bad, and so like guys have asked me, well, is it 640 worth it? And to me, that's where the value is. And we're kind of jumping the gun a little bit into it, but like the the value of the 640 is that when you do magnify, it doesn't go straight to garbage. And I don't,
Right.
I shouldn't say garbage, but just the ability to really like go to 5 power or 6 power or something else and
Sure.
still have a pretty good image.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't have a lot of, time behind other thermals. I've looked
Sure.
through some really nice ones, but like I've haven't spent enough time to be like, wow, there's, a 384 and a 640, like it's night and day. Because my 5 power, when I double it down, it's actually less resolution than a 384.
Correct.
Because it's a 320.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
Anywho, we've gone. Go ahead.
You're going to kind of cut that in half. And, a lot of customers call and they say, what's the difference between a 384 and a 640? Do I really need a 640? I ask them that question. Are you doing multiple types of hunting? And if you're going to start out with that lower base magnification, then the 640 really is worth it, because if you bump it up, you don't want that picture to degrade as least as possible.
Sure.
In a 384 scope, I will tell a lot of customers, at your base magnification and a 640 at base magnification, a lot of times it's kind of difficult to tell the difference in the image quality.
Oh, I bet.
Especially for the price difference. Most people that come to the shop, they will look through the 384 and the 640 and they'll say, boy, I do see that the 640 is a little bit crisper and cleaner, but is it really worth a $1,500, $2,000, $3,000 difference? What we do then is I'll bump them up to the 2X and the 384, and they'll look through it and they go, wow, that really kind of
made a difference.
Got bad. Yeah. Then they'll look through the 640 and they'll go, now that's what I'm paying for. That's the difference in the quality and what it doesn't degrade as bad as quickly. Kind of another analogy I use in a 384, base magnification is great. When you go to 2X, it gets bad. 3X, it's horrible. And 4X, you might as well forget it. I don't even know why they put it in there. So
right.
Now with the 640, when you're at base magnification, obviously it's great. You go to the 384, or I'm sorry, to the 2X. Most people will go, gosh, that's really what I'm paying for is how much better that image looks than the 384 on 2X. 3X still looks pretty good. It's starting to get bad. And 4X is, it's not great, but if you're really looking at a long distance, maybe 600, 700, 800 yards away, you can still identify buildings and so forth and stuff like that. But really the 4X base magnifications, they start getting pretty bad.
Regardless.
Regardless.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not this new Wonder unit. I don't know.
Yeah. The iRay RS75, it is pretty amazing. Very expensive piece of equipment, but definitely a joy to play with for sure. So.
All right. So let's keep moving down the list before we get into that, Mac Daddy. So
sure.
A question that I've struggled to answer this for some people that have asked me about my thermal. So objective size, you see a lot of XYZ 25, 35, 50, that's the objective, correct?
Correct.
So in a normal scope, I understand what that means, but does that correspond the same with like a thermal? Does that affect your field of view at all? Does it affect your ability to do other things? Like, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So, with the objective size on a day scope, typically you're trying to let more light into that scope so that you can see through it, get more
Longer,
clarity.
later. Yep.
Same thing with the thermal scopes. It is allowing more thermal to come through that lens in the front, but it really plays a bigger effect in your field of view. Okay, so if you have a 3X scope for coyote hunting, for example, the bigger the lens that you get, a little bit more better field of view that you're going to get with that larger lens. Okay. Typically, when you see a 3.0, 3.5, 4, 4.5 base magnification, it's going to have a pretty good size objective lens on it. Otherwise, if it doesn't, you're probably going to be a very, very tight field of view, and probably looking for just primarily coyote hunting or even coon hunting at that point.
Sure.
But there's nothing wrong with a 35 millimeter lens, 25 millimeter lens. It's just the bigger that you go in that germanium lens, that is a very expensive piece of the scope.
Oh, it makes a big difference.
You're paying a lot for that larger lens. Now, there is also with the lenses different clarities of lens or qualities of lens that they use. There's your f1, your f1.1, f1.2, your f1.0. The lower the number again, the better the quality of that particular piece of germanium lens is.
Okay.
So, that's something else to take a look at. If you get a thermal scope and you go, gosh, this one doesn't look quite as good as what this one does, it may be in that germanium lens. The other thing that they do with the germanium lens is they put a coating on the outside of them, and it's either like an HD coating or you may have a diamond-like coating or a DLC coating is what they call it. The DLC coatings are definitely the best that you can get. It makes your lens very scratch resistant. So if you are out in maybe poor weather conditions, a little bit of moisture gets on the lens, you go to wipe that off, hopefully with a soft cloth. Hopefully we're not using any Brillo pads on those or anything. But at the end of the day, when you go to wipe those off, you don't want them to scratch and so forth. So they do have a very good lens. Some of the lower quality lens coatings that are out there, you will find that if they do get wet and you don't wipe them off right away, we've seen some of the lens coatings peel off.
Oh, wow.
That type of thing. So the diamond-like coatings are usually the best. And if you look at the end of the any particular scope and you see like a goldish color or a yellowish color to that lens, it's probably an HD coating, which is not quite as good as what the diamond-like coatings are that are they will be black in color. So you look at the objective lens on the end, it'll just be completely black. So
interesting.
yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah.
So objective size controls primarily field of view.
Correct.
And like you said, lets more thermal in. So would you say, is this in right or wrong? If you take something that's a 35 and the same exact scope model to a 50, is it going to have any better image or just a wider field of view?
Wider field of view.
Okay. So the image quality is the exact same. It's just what you can see when you're looking. And I think this is important because a guy, like for me, I was told not to get a 35. And I don't have a scanner. So like my scope is my scanner, plays a big factor in it. And like also looking through other scopes, like the field of view is different for each manufacturer, right?
Yes.
So like it doesn't matter what you're doing. That I don't think until you hunt, like you'll look through it and you'll be like, oh, this isn't, you'll look through a 35 and then a 50. And when you're looking at something that's sitting still at like 50 yards away at the shop, they may not get it. But when you're in that application, to me, that field of view is a big deal, man, for me, even if I had a scanner, right? Like I wish my scope had a wider field of view.
Sure.
Because I've looked through other scopes, so I have, like I said, the Rattler, and the iRay is one that I've looked through a lot, the 640, the Ricoh.
Yep.
And, man, that field of view is much bigger with the same exact resolution, and it makes a big difference for especially when you're by yourself or when you're in that hunting scenario to me.
Typically your base magnifications are going to, play a role in that as well too. The higher the base magnification, the narrower the field of view is going to be, unless you have a larger lens on the front of it. At the same time, a lot of people feel that if they have a 3.0 base mag and they've got a 50 millimeter lens, that's going to be better than say a 2.0 with a 35 millimeter lens. And technically the 2.0 with the 35 millimeter lens probably going to have a little bit larger field of view.
Really?
The other advantage that you do get with a larger objective is they can put a larger sensor in there, which is going to actually allow you to detect at further ranges. Okay. Kind of the Mac Daddy of scopes that you were talking about earlier, the RS75 by iRay, it's got a 75 millimeter lens on the end of it. Jeez. So, the detection range on that particular piece of equipment is almost 3,300 meters. Wow. So that's a long range. So
the furthest that I've seen a coyote, and I called it in, this is obviously on Onyx, it was about 1,100 yards.
Sure.
And just like you said earlier, the only way I could tell it was a coyote that far was how it was moving. Everybody can tell like how a coyote kind of trots or lopes. and also just the way they're responding to a call. Yep. Same thing with deer. When I'm scanning, when I'm checking, like you can see those signatures far away, 8,000-9,000 yards away, and you can just tell by how they're moving and grouped up that it's a deer, right? Yep. Now, once it gets, and it's hard pressed to even have a place around the Midwest that you can see that far. So, but most of my experience is like in that 400 yard range. It's pretty easy to tell exactly what it is with my 640.
Correct.
That range right there is pretty average, I think, for most of the people that are going to hunt. You get to a field scenario, it's rare, like I said, or it's less common to get those big, wide open places like you would in Nebraska and Colorado.
Sure.
So other feature, display resolution. That was one that I had a question for you. There's some differences there. Now, like, I think it's going to go again with the clarity, but go ahead and explain that.
Yeah, so there is another resolution, and it's for the screen itself, because obviously with a thermal scope, you're watching a screen or a computer screen inside of there.
Yep.
Now if you're looking through a 640 by 480 and it has a 1280 by 768 screen or what have you, there's a few different numbers there. Yep. You're going to get the full clarity because the sensor is only a 640 by 480, right? But there is other things that get displayed on the screen besides just the thermal image. You've got your overlay of information for your inclimeters, your maybe a laser rangefinder if you have a laser rangefinder on it. So sometimes there's directions. Timestamps. If you're on 2x, 3x, 4x, all the different settings that you're technically on. That stuff can get a little bit grainy on some of the screens, but there is also a couple companies out there that are doing a 2560 by 2560 screen, which is really impressive because it's super clear. When you look at the information on there, it's very, very easy to read. Sometimes when you look through a thermal, your eye will be dead center so that you can see the thermal picture really good. But if you move your eye left or right, you won't be able to see the information as well because it gets a little grainy. With the 2560 screens, you're going to get just a really, really crystal clear image. Some of the new style scopes out there, which is, I call it a traditional rifle scope, which would be like your Thermions or your Bolts. Yep. And then AGM has an adder out there as well. Those traditional style scopes, when you're looking through it, you're looking through a round scope, but it's got a rectangle screen in it, and it takes up a little extra space or makes that screen a little bit smaller. Where some of the new companies out there, the iRay Bolt 640, for example, it actually has a round screen in it. So it takes advantage of all the space inside there. Plus, it's a little bit more natural feeling when you look through it, because most people are used to a day scope that is round and you do see the full picture, where this one you do that as well. Now it does display some information over the top, but you can also remove that information if you don't want to see it. So those, even though, like I said, you've got a 2560 screen, you're really not getting any more clarity on the thermal side of it, but you are getting a lot of clarity on the information that's being displayed, and they are really cool. So they got just a beautiful image to them.
So okay, that makes a ton of sense of what you're saying, and it is coming from a guy that's, again, relatively new to this second season. I'm up to 17 coyotes so far this year. When you look through it, looking and seeing that rectangular image at first, it takes a little bit of getting used to.
Yep.
Because just like you said, so many people are used to that nice circle objective, seeing the crosshairs run all the way to the top and the bottom.
Sure.
And, it's, for me, the dead space is more or less on the top and bottom, not so much the side to side. It's smaller, and that's the way it'll be on most scopes, I believe.
Yeah. The iRay Bolt that came out with the round screen with the 2560, the interesting thing is at the top and the bottom, which would be wasted space with a rectangular screen, they actually display all the information in that area. So you do get more surface area on the inside of the screen. And that is just really awesome. When you look at it, it's almost like looking at a big screen TV versus a really small TV.
Sure.
So, some nice features that have come out there on the screens. I will tell you, in that small of a screen, and it's a 2560 by 2560, it is pretty expensive. You are paying quite a bit of money for that, but it's something to look for, and I think more companies will start going with that 2560 display as time goes on.
Well, one of my favorite quotes that one of my friends told me is, "It's not cheap being cool."
Right.
So this whole thermal game is not,
sure.
It's addicting. Gosh, and I'll tell you what, it's the most fun video game you'll ever play.
Absolutely.
So there's a couple other features that I wanted to cover. So things like the laser rangefinder. I think pictures-in-picture is kind of a standard one. Audio is one that is not a standard option in a lot of scopes. Color palettes and reticle options, and there's probably more that you know of, but those are some of the things off the top of my head that also are things to maybe look for when you're thinking about getting an optic.
Sure. I'll attack the laser rangefinder first.
Yep. It's the most expensive one.
We could talk about this one for hours on end, but in a nutshell, the laser rangefinder is a really nice tool, because when you do look at a thermal screen, you are looking at two-dimensional. It is tough to tell your distances, your ranges.
Unless you've done it very much.
So unless you've done it a lot. And so that's a key thing right there, is if you are hunting a lot of the same properties over and over again, and you're familiar with the properties, your ranges already, then you could probably forego the laser rangefinder and spend maybe your money more on the clarity of the scope and go with maybe a 640 that doesn't have a laser rangefinder versus a 384 that does. However, if you are going out and hunting a lot of properties that you're not familiar with, you don't know the ranges, the laser rangefinder can be a pretty useful tool. One thing that a lot of customers call me up, they're like, man, I'd really like to know the range of my coyotes and how far out they are. With a lot of the firearms out there today, the ballistics and all that stuff that's been improved over the years, I do ask a lot of people, well, if you're going to shoot a coyote at 200 yards or 300, does it really make a huge difference in where you're going to hold your crosshair? Probably not.
Not with, like you said, most varmint calibers. So where I think the big thing for me, if I was wavering the laser rangefinder option, and of course my friends out west in Colorado told me I needed it, I didn't go with it just because of the added expense. But I think that if you are not familiar with the area, or if you change a scope, I found myself oftentimes not that, just like you said, my holdover is not going to be any different. I'm shooting a 224 Valkyrie, and I've got it, I reload, it's hot, like it shoots relatively flat.
Sure.
But sometimes it's like, especially on new properties, I'll call in a coyote, I'm like, oh, he's kind of close. And I'm like, got to take a second to be like, no, he's not. Like, wait a second. Or inversely, like I've taken a couple other buddies out, and I'm watching on my phone, and I'm like, dude, he's like at 80 yards. What are you? He's like, really? I thought he was far away. Like, no, he's close. Like, you kind of, without doing it a lot, you're clueless to distance.
Yep.
So you might be taking a shot maybe too early, or like, and more times than not with people, I'm like, dude, they're going to run into us. Like, right. Take the shot. Like, come on, So yeah. I could see how that would be super handy. And for me, I would almost think, and this is maybe, again, me not having one, maybe one in a scanner might be a little bit better of an option. I was going to ask you what you thought.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to bring that up as
opinion.
Yeah, as a budget type of thing. One thing that we've noticed that most manufacturers, for whatever reason, you can take the exact same scope with a laser rangefinder and the exact same scope without a laser rangefinder, and in the scopes, it's about $1,000 difference on some of them. Mm-hmm. When you get into the monoculars, you can have the same laser rangefinder, same monocular, but they're only getting maybe $400 or $500 more in the monocular. So it seems like you can buy the laser rangefinder in the monocular a lot more cost effectively. The other thing is, I do tell a lot of people that to have the laser rangefinder in your monocular is really where it should be. and that is my obviously personal opinion. I might get blasted for that, but the laser rangefinder being in your monocular, because when you go out, if you're coyote hunting, you really should be ranging, especially if you don't know the property. How do you know where to set up?
Sure.
If you're looking through your monocular and you're like, hey, there's a set of woods over there, I want to be 100, 150 because I think that's where the coyote's going to come out. You want to be able to range that stuff before you go out. The other thing is that is really handy is if you've got a hunting partner with you that doesn't have a laser rangefinder, you can say, okay, hey, do you see this landmark over here? Maybe a hillside or a pine tree or the set of woods, what have you. And you can let your partner know, hey, that's how far that particular object is, and go from there. And the other thing is with it being in your scanner, especially when you're walking out to places, you can range some things. A lot of people don't realize with laser rangefinder, you're actually shooting a laser out there, and then it has to bounce off of something and come back to the scope. It's not an instantaneous. It's in milliseconds, but it's in the higher milliseconds, if you will. So a lot of times you can't get a moving object to range. So that becomes very difficult, especially something as small as a coyote, to be able to bracket that, because when you bring the laser rangefinder up in your thermal scope, you're probably going to have a little bracket that you need to put that coyote in. And if it's moving, it's very, very difficult to get an accurate range.
I could totally see that. The other thing for me is you have to touch it, so there's not many people that somebody that's new to thermal, you think about when you get behind the gun, you're going to range your deer, your coyote, your whatever, and then get in your gun. Like, you have to think that it was a learning curve enough for me to learn my buttons and play with them and like turn the record on. But now I couldn't imagine like being in my scope and like having my hand on top and like trying to range instead of having my hand maybe on the tripod bracing or whatever,
Right.
To me, again, as you said, it'd be more important in the scanner to where, okay, now he's within 200, going to the gun. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And then you just don't even care. Like,
right.
He's there. And the last thing for me too is this will be a good transcend into picture-in-picture is I like a clean picture.
Yep.
In my image. And I know that it's a small little bracket, but then you have your numbers that it's reading.
Correct.
And like I to the point where I don't ever run picture-in-picture for me. I just, some guys I see where they want to have that extra mag, but for me, I'll just hit my button if I do. I just, like I said, I want to have that nice clean picture, the big sight picture, the biggest field of view, and I think maybe a laser rangefinder in your optic would just, like I said, add to the clutter.
It does add to the clutter. It does also add to, just a lot more information that you're having to process.
Sure.
A lot of the laser rangefinders, they're going to put the range in the upper right-hand corner or the lower left-hand corner, which it doesn't seem like a big deal when you're watching a little screen inside of a scope, but you're taking your eye off of your target.
Oh, yeah.
And that's not good. Now, there are a few companies that are starting to come out with laser rangefinders that actually display the range right underneath the horizontal line of the crosshair. So you don't have to take your eye off quite as far, but there's very few that are doing that.
Sure.
But again, laser rangefinders, they can be great. They can also be a hindrance if you're not used to using them. Like you said, you have to push a button to range something. There are also scan modes. Most of them you can put in scan mode that it will automatically, wherever you're aiming it, it will scan.
Nice.
And it will tell you the numbers up there. But again, with thermals, one of the biggest things is battery power. And when you leave it in scan mode, it will definitely affect your overall
Didn't
battery
even
power.
think about that. Yeah, because the whole time it's scanning and reading.
Yep.
Just like video recording or all the other things that we get
Video
into
recording,
with battery life.
Wi-Fi is another big one. If you are Wi-Fiing it to your phone, we have a lot of people call us up and say, well, I'm going to take a kid with me or what have you, and I want them to be able to see what I'm seeing. I've even got a few that hunt like out of a barn and just open up a window and look out that way, and they actually just sit there and watch their iPad. But the Wi-Fi definitely is another thing that will affect your battery life overall.
Okay. So picture in picture. I think it's pretty synonymous of what it is, but go over it. What are your thoughts on it?
Picture in picture, it's just like picture in picture on your TV. It's going to give you a smaller screen that you're looking at the same thing. I love picture in picture. I probably would not ever buy a scope without it.
Are there some that don't have it?
There are a few.
Interesting.
Actually, the Envision XRF, believe it or not, a very expensive top-end scope does not have picture-in-picture.
Huh. So why do you like it so much?
Well, the reason I do like it is because when I am scanning for a coyote, not with my scanner, but with my rifle scope, I'm using the main screen. Okay.
Sure.
But when you finally get your main crosshair and your main screen on like a coyote, then when I'm ready to pull the trigger, I am always looking at the picture in picture.
Doesn't matter. You're always looking at the higher mag.
Picture in picture, because your picture in picture is almost it varies on different scopes, but most of the scopes it's going to be 2x of what you have on your main screen. So if you are at base magnification, say with a 3.0 640 by 480, it's going to be
320.
Well, you'd be 320 in the screen, but it's also going to be at 6x.
6 power.
6 power, right. So when you go to pull the trigger, you're able to put that crosshair, which is typically just like a plus sign versus
whatever
your
you
actual
want it to be.
crosshair.
Yep.
But when you put that on the coyote, you can actually strategically place your shot much, much better with that picture in picture.
Sure.
Because it's going to be much larger in the screen. So
that
is one of the reasons I love picture in picture. I think you mentioned you didn't care for it.
To each their own, man.
Right. But I never hunt without picture in picture.
And I went out west for my first ever coyote hunt experience, and it was white hot. Like, again, my buddies out west, they have tons of ground, and like I was in it, and I just constantly was finding myself like looking down at the top one and the bottom one, top one, and like it was like sensory overload for me. And it probably, and like I said, it didn't help that it was the first time going out, and every stand we're calling in 2 or 3 coyotes, and I'm like, oh crap, zoom in, zoom out, what am I doing? And I found my eyes going down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. But I could see how you're saying, like, you don't even mess with the zoom because you have it already there.
Yep.
You leave your base mag as what it is, and you run your picture in picture for when you're going to take your shot.
Exactly. And if you got a coyote charging in and it's hungry, it's coming in, it's hard charging in, you maybe whistle a little bit to get it to stop. As soon as it stops, you've got that perfect broadside shot. You can again strategically place that a little bit more towards the front of the coyote versus it being smaller in your main screen, and not being able to place that shot quite as strategically. But I will tell you that every time I pull the trigger, my eye is on the picture in picture.
My wife's uncle Ray, we had a conversation about this several Thanksgivings ago, and he totally makes sense. He's like, higher magnification doesn't guarantee more accuracy, but it does guarantee more precision. And that's what you're getting to.
Exactly.
You're not going to shoot any more accurate. You're going to dictate how you shoot.
Correct.
But like you said, I can zoom in more and tell exactly where I'm going to put those crosshairs. Yep. And the crosshairs don't lose resolution.
Sure.
I think that's something else to know. Like, your crosshairs maintain nice and clean.
Correct.
It's the image. And even then, it's that double down on a 640 is very nice.
Yep. Anytime that you magnify or you go up in your digital magnification, your print of all your information is going to stay the same size. It's not going to increase in size, obviously, because it's an overlay on top of that screen.
Yep. So audio. This was a big bummer for me. I bought the AGM Rattler, and it's been a good scope, but like, being a guy that does editing and we have videos, like, video is so important.
Sure.
Or audio is so important to a video, like, that's why you have music on all these Instagram reels and stuff. And it's just not a lot of them, actually. There's only a couple out there, and you can go with this. So, like, if you know them off the top of your head, name which ones do record an audio and which ones don't.
Oh boy. So most of all your AGM product is not going to have audio recording, except they do have one now that's the Adder. That is the traditional scope style.
Yep. That's their answer to the Thermion.
It is. I will say that the audio hasn't been real good on it so far. But your Pulsar units, almost all Pulsar units are going to have audio. It's one of their advantages with them using their own proprietary software and processors, that they do have audio, which is great. You can also turn the audio off if you don't want the audio, which I know you're looking at me kind of funny, like, why would you want to turn the audio off? I've had a lot of people reach out to us and say, gosh, I wish this recorded audio. And I'm like, okay, well, we can switch you up to a Pulsar scope if you want, and you can go record audio. And then they get the Pulsar scope and they call me back and they go, I got the scope and now I leave the audio off all the time.
What?
Exactly.
Crazy. Probably because they're cussing so much when they miss.
Well, that's exactly why. The celebration after the shot.
Really?
And they go, my gosh, I just ruined my video because I can't let my family or my kids hear exactly what I just said. But they said some of them will tell you that they sound like a raving lunatic after they shoot something, so they don't want the audio. Some people that post their videos on, say, YouTube or on the internet, they're going to want to scrub the audio off of it anyway. There's a lot of people out there that don't want to share what they're using for calls when they're hunting, because it seems like when somebody has success with something, then everybody uses it. And now we're educating coyotes out there all the time and using the same sounds. So there's a lot of people that say, I really wish it had audio. Most people don't use it.
Interesting. I guess that's just for me because I've been immersed in, filming for so long.
Yes.
I mean, could you imagine watching a deer hunt without any audio?
Yep.
But I guess I get what you're saying with a predator hunt, especially with the audio giving away your secrets.
Yeah.
But to me, it's just when you see the shot and like you just don't hear anything, I'm like, oh, it's so much cooler when you hear that slap.
Yes.
And at night it seems to be even more magnified.
Absolutely.
It's just so quiet out, and like, especially when you get to like those 150-yard ranges, you really hear that slap. And those coyotes, when you shoot them, like I said, with a varmint round, it's like punching a pumpkin. It's the best way I can explain it. It's just whoomp.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that, because a lot of times, whether it be my ears or what have you, I don't hear it a lot. Bill hears it all the time when we're out hunting together. So he's like, "Oh, I know you hit it because I heard the slap." I'm like, I didn't hear it, but my ears just don't lend to hearing some of those things at times. But no, that's definitely.
So AGM has only one that comes out with it. I don't think Bering has any audio.
Bering does not have any audio at this time. There is on the horizon coming up a Super Yoder that is going to have a laser rangefinder on it. Supposedly will have audio as well. One of the biggest questions I get asked is why, if it records, can it not record audio?
Microphone.
The microphone. Exactly. They basically have to drill a hole in the side of a scope that they're trying to keep waterproof. Most
they just
of the
need
scopes
to talk to GoPro. GoPro, like that little camera, I've got several of them, and like the new Hero 10s, the microphone is insane for what it is. I mean, it's a 2-inch by 3-inch little brick, takes 4K video, and the audio is like as good as these almost.
Yes.
And I'm like, holy smokes, like somebody at freaking these thermal companies used to call me like, hey, we just want to talk to the guy that came up with this, because and they're waterproof. You take them, you just throw them in the water.
Yep. And I think that's the most expensive part that the manufacturers go through, is putting that microphone in and then making sure that it stays waterproof.
Sure.
Pulsar's sound quality is
awesome.
Is very awesome. They do a very good job. iRay has done a really good job with theirs as well. They are starting to come out with more and more scopes that will have audio on them. One that's on the rise or on upcoming is that has been very popular is the iRay Bolt TL35. It's a 384 traditional style scope. Does not have audio right now, but they are coming out with a version 2 that will have audio. And it will also have a new feature. It will be Bluetooth for a laser rangefinder. Now, it won't come with the laser rangefinder module, but it will have the ability to upgrade to a laser rangefinder. And then they're also improving the screen in that particular unit. Now, I do not have any specs on what they're improving the screen to, but the version 2s, I believe, just recently shipped to us, and they should be widely available out there by the end of January.
after SHOT.
After SHOT Show.
Yep.
One of the things that is a big holdup right now is SHOT Show. All these manufacturers want to go to SHOT Show with the latest and greatest and introduce it there. I'm not 100% sure why, because it's for dealers only. It's not for the consumers to go out and look at. And all the dealers are like, hey, just give us the equipment. We want it now. Right. Give it to us as quickly as we possibly can. But I do believe that the Super Yoder LRF will show up at SHOT Show. The new version 2 Bolt by iRay will show up at SHOT Show, and hoping to see some other good things come from Pulsar that would be in a higher base magnification as well too.
It's always been kind of oxymoronic for me because the ATA show's right before the SHOT Show.
Yep.
And like same thing with SHOT Show isn't near as bad, but like at the ATA, a lot of the companies launched most of their new archery associated products, and it's like deer season is literally just now coming to a close across most of the country.
Yep.
The South still has a little bit going on, but it's like, wouldn't you think that maybe you should have your archery show in like August so everybody can buy all their new broadheads and sights and quivers and arrows,
right,
for deer season? And same thing with SHOT Show, especially thermal related. Like we're going to launch this during the middle of like dead center of coyote season.
Yeah.
So, hey, go out and buy a new thermal and then sight it in when it's -10. Like that'll be fun. Like great. People do it though, man.
Yeah.
Matthews launches their new bow in November every year. And literally people will go buy them. Like, I'm like, wow, you are ballsy.
Right. To go out with something brand new that you've never used before and no experience behind it.
Hey, but whatever.
We run into a lot of that, not only with just release of products, but here recently we've had a few manufacturers that have decided to come out with a whole new billing system and right in the middle of the busy season. So, and kind of a bad time to do that. Like why they don't do that in the summer, I have no idea.
Right.
But audio is definitely a great feature for the scopes if you're going to use it. I will tell you that my experience, most people don't. Other things that are great too is just the different color palettes that you can run into. I know you mentioned White Hot earlier. White Hot is probably the most favorite, the most popular amongst everything. We do get some people calling us second favorite would be Black Hot.
Sure.
Black Hot does tend to have some really good detail and high humidity. So if you get in a high humidity situation, you might want to toggle between that White Hot and that Black Hot just to see if you can get a little bit more detail and go from there. So,
and like I've found it's really personal preference. The color palettes.
It very much is.
I think just to echo what you said, White Hot is what I always run. I've played around with Black Hot a little bit because I just enjoy that stark contrast. I guess my next favorite would be kind of like that. Some people call it fusion, where it's a multicolor spectrum.
Yeah, fusion. We've had a few people that have reached out to us, actually sent us videos and of their thermal scopes, and they're like, "It's in fusion." We're like, "Why did you record this in fusion?" They're like, "Oh, that's my favorite." Huh. It's probably not my favorite, but there's also a red hot out there as well too.
That's my least favorite,
and it's okay. I will tell you that red hot works better in some thermal scopes than it does in others.
Okay.
So that's something to kind of take a look at as well.
Sure.
But you're right. It's probably my least favorite. I'm always on either White Hot, and I will switch to Black Hot if it's high humidity.
The thing that I think is the biggest factor for me, and some scopes have the ability for the reticles to change color, which is really cool.
Absolutely.
But to me, it's having my reticle contrast is a big factor for why I would like to run White Hot or Black Hot.
Yep.
Again, when you add another several colors to the palette, and you have a colored reticle, like now it's just like, oh, it's a rainbow in my freaking scope.
Yep.
So, and again, if you've never looked through one, man, you gotta. What we're talking about plays a big factor when you're looking through it out at a shop window or a garage window. It's one thing until you're physically hunting, and then this all makes sense,
right?
And then the next one are reticle option themselves.
Yeah, all the scopes out there have multiple reticle options available. Some are better than others.
Yes, some
have the mil spec reticles in them, like your Trigicons. The Envision, I believe, has, and then Pulsar has a couple as well too.
Yep.
Bearing Optics has a couple hash marks on theirs. Sometimes it's hard to get the specs on what the hash marks are.
Sure. They're just there.
But they're, you can usually dig in and find them, or if you reach out to us, we can usually dig those up for you as well too, and go from there. But the reticles, most of them have about 8 options. Some of them a little bit more than that. You get into the pulsars, they may have like 9, 10, or 12 different reticles in them, and then you can change the colors on them as well. I highly recommend at least a scope that's got the black and the white, which is common, but also red and green.
Yep.
If it has red and green, I'm satisfied. But if you go with like a Pulsar doesn't do a really good job. They've got purple, blue, yellow, orange.
Oh yeah.
And I guess the reason I mentioned that, orange is actually my favorite color. It gives you a very good, very clean definition of the reticle itself.
Yeah.
But it's not overbearing on the screen.
Sure.
Some of the different reds and greens will be a little bit over bright on the screen. And unfortunately, with most of them, there's no way to control the brightness of the reticle.
Sure.
So
you're right.
But again, if I have at least the red, the green, the black, and the white, I'm usually happy. I will tell you, some of the most expensive scopes out there in the market only have black and white.
You're right.
So
like the
Envision. But I will tell you that it is still a very clear reticle. It does have the ability that if your black reticle is on a black image, it will turn to white.
Right.
So
cool.
It automatically contrasts the opposite direction. So you can still see your reticle clearly, which is great. There's some Trigicons that do the same thing as well. So
what I think is neat about it, like especially if you were going to take one of those further shots, it's like, I know my crosshairs are on him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which you should know that anyway, but like having that switch over, you're like, okay, I know I'm like holding where I should.
Right.
The only other thing that I want to talk about with the reticle options is different scopes have different ways to set your zero. So like my scope, for example, I have multiple reticle options. Each reticle has its own set of zero. So like where I know other scopes, you can use the same reticle for different scope or different guns.
Different guns. That would be your profiles.
Correct.
Yep.
So like for me though, like I run my main normal crosshairs, but let's say I wanted to put it on a 22, like you said, to shoot coons.
Yep.
I would have to use a different reticle for a different zero.
Correct.
Where like some of the other scopes, you can just, like you said, have a different profile, keep that same crosshair that you're used to.
Yep.
Where for me, I have to, if I'm going to put on a different gun, I have to use a different
reticle.
Yes.
Yep. That is one of the characteristics of the AGMs. But most of them, they use profiles. So you have either 4, some of them have 5 profiles in them, which you can set up 4 different guns, zero them to that particular gun, and then you can go back and forth. It's a nice feature, especially if you have a good quick disconnect mount that you can go back and forth from rifle to rifle. I do always recommend that if you do switch from one rifle to the next and you use that next profile,
check it.
Yeah.
I will say I was super skeptical because I had popped it off and I did a software update. Mm-hmm. Usually I just leave it plugged in, like you said, don't need to worry about it.
Sure.
And Shane and Robert said, man, we took ours off and it did not affect zero. And I had 2 other guys tell me the same thing. And so the AGM has an ADA mount, which is a nice one. And I still checked it and it was actually still right there.
Yeah.
But I mean, it just totally counterintuitive. I'm a gun geek and, love scopes and long range. And it's like, I lap my rings, I set everything, and it's like perfect. I don't ever want to take it off.
Right.
And then I have these guys like, yeah, just pop it off. You're fine. I'm like, you're crazy, man. Like, no way.
Yeah. No, if you mount them the same way every time, it should be good. Anytime you're going into like a Picatinny rail, if you just, when you mount it into the slot, make sure you go into the same slot and then push it forward and then lock it down.
Yep.
So if you do that the same every time, you should have some pretty good luck. There's some manufacturers out there that they go with their particular mounts. As you mentioned, AGM uses ADM.
Or ADM, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
American Defense
Manufacturing, yep. Their Bearing Optics has a LaRue tactical mount.
Very nice.
Very nice mounts on those. There's some... Delta Zero mounts out there as well too that
Very nice,
Trijicon uses. But a lot of the quick disconnect mounts, most of them are really good quality. Bearing Optics also puts out one of their own mounts. I've never had a problem with it, but it is probably going to be one of my least favorite mounts if you are going to be switching it from gun to gun. I would probably recommend upgrading it to the LaRue Tactical, which they do have on every scope now. So
the only thing where I have one of my buddies that does it, he has his gun that he's built, and then he has another thermal that he bought used, and it's got a quick detach mount, and he's like, I just take it off, and that's my scanner when I go. But if I have a buddy that comes with me, I'll put it back on my backup gun, and then we each have guns.
Yeah.
I'm like, I guess I didn't even think about doing that.
Sure.
Dual purposing your backup scanner, if you will, or your backup scope.
That's a very, very interesting concept. We used to have a lot of people that would reach out, when thermals, well, they're still very expensive. But when they were even more expensive, they would want to dual purpose it. They would say, well, it's got that quick detach. I should be able to scan with it and then snap it onto my gun in the field.
Oh, no way.
There's a lot of people that have tried.
Holy
it
moly.
is just really tough to do, especially in the dark.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And to put it on the right spot, no, you get what I'm saying. He's like, when I go out, he's like, I take this. And then if I know somebody's going, which I thought about that, but it's like, man.
I will tell you that the scopes are built to be thermal scopes.
Yeah.
The monoculars are built to be monoculars.
Right.
And the biggest difference you're going to find on your monoculars, either they're going to fit in your hand much better. Mm-hmm. They're going to have larger buttons on them, bigger control surfaces so that you can make adjustments on the fly. They're just going to fit in your hand. They're going to be a lot lighter, just a lot more ergonomically built.
And some of the newer scanners, they're almost like the size of like a larger rangefinder.
Exactly.
The Fusion series and the Pulsar like keys and Axions, like those are very nice, as far as they're cumbersome wise and size wise, like you're saying.
And
totally
a lot of those units you're going to find going back to microns. They're going to be a 12 micron because they can put a smaller sensor inside there when it's got a 12 micron. So the one advantage to them is they fit in the palm of your hand very well. If you're putting them into a backpack, they don't take up much real estate. Very small, very compact. You can hang them from your neck just like really any of them. The downfall is the smaller the size that you go, the smaller the screen's going to be on the inside of that particular
didn't
unit.
Even think about that.
So when you start talking about the Helion, like the XP50 Pros, that type of stuff, that's a larger unit. It's a very hot unit. Yeah. Bearing Optics also makes one called the Phenom.
Yep.
And it's a very nice scope. It's a little bit larger body size, but you get the exact same size screen as what you get in the thermal scope.
That's a nice thing.
So it's definitely nice. There's some AGM type hands out there that are smaller, cylindrical style scopes or monoculars, but they do have a smaller screen inside of them. So it's kind of a give and take.
And then the iRay has it's not the cabin, is it?
iRay has the cabin, and then they've also got the Zoom.
Yes.
So the Zoom series is going to be their larger round scopes. Monoculars, they're going to be just larger in size overall. They're going to be a better image quality, that type of stuff. The cabin is going to be more of your compact handheld, fits in your hand very well.
Yep.
One little advantage to the cabin is it does come with a flashlight on the end of it, which has found itself to be pretty useful.
Sure.
The Zoom, one of the neat things about that is it does have, when we talked about field of view earlier, it has a variable field of view.
It's a super wide field of view.
Yeah, so it actually varies as you turn the focus on it. It will switch over to a larger field of view when you zoom out and so forth. So it's kind of a neat unit, kind of unique. They are expensive. But you pay for some of those unique features as well. So
all right, so let's go through the brands. We've broke it down, the sensors, the microns, the fresh rate, a whole bunch of information here.
Sure.
And I get it, man. Opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one. So I want the Dark Knight Outdoors. I want Jamie's opinion on these brands that we have listed here. And we talked about a couple before. You don't have to You don't have to worry about
Sure.
brushing anybody the wrong way. We do controversies, and I get enough hate mail on some of them that, so on our last podcast with the deer age lady, if you need somebody to hate on, just hate on me. So don't worry about it. Go through them.
So we've got first up ATN. I think that's about all I'm going to say about ATN.
Yeah.
It's out there.
I've never heard a good thing about them.
Yeah.
And like, especially when you talk about thermals, so many people say, well, I'm just going to get into it.
Sure.
The biggest problem that I think you're going to find out with an ATN is good luck trying to sell it, man.
Yeah.
You're going to have to find somebody that was like you, that doesn't want to spend a lot of money, and you're not going to get a lot of value retention out of that.
Sure.
Same thing with the next brand. Like,
Yeah, ATN, they've got their place, I guess, but we do have a lot of problems with quality with them. A lot of dead units right out of the box. Now, the one thing is we do not carry ATN at all.
For that reason. Yep.
Specifically, but we get a lot of phone calls. Hey, I got a scope. It was dead right out of the box. I've tried calling them. I can't get a hold of anybody. The customer service is not great. I did hear a period of time where ATN was doing a little bit better on their service, but it seems like it just depends on who you get, and you just never know. So I would say if you can save up a little extra money, get away from the ATN if you can, and go with something of quality. Even the ATNs get pretty expensive as well. They do have some high-end units, but they are nowhere near the quality of the other scopes out there on the market. They cut a lot of corners. So
FLIR is another one.
FLIR is another one, but you're not going to hear a whole lot about FLIR anymore because they got out of the civilian market.
Yes.
They used to produce some really nice units. People have always heard about FLIR in maybe like firefighting equipment, even like your home thermal detection for just like thermal barriers and so forth. FLIR had some units that way, but they did decide to get out of the civilian market, and they are only providing to law enforcement and military. Yep. So you're not going to see a whole lot of FLIRs out there. The FLIR units that were out there on the market in the civilian, you want to pay accordingly to them. They are a little bit older technology now compared to the new stuff that's out there, but there are still some FLIR PT units out there. They're not terrible. They're good units, but just a little bit older in the technology at this point. AGM is another one that's out there. They're, I would say, a little bit more what we consider the starter scopes, entry level. You're going to see a lot of the different HD coatings on some of the lenses. They do produce a pretty good image. There's a lot of AGM fans out there. I get some phone calls, and sometimes I try to steer people a different direction from AGM, and they say, well, I've had great luck with my AGM. They're probably ones that, have gotten a good scope and not really had issues, but sometimes those people haven't looked through some of the other scopes out there on the market either.
And
so
it's totally budget dictated. And I'm a buy once, cry once guy.
Exactly.
So this, again, we have no affiliation with any of these companies. This is just, I'm being honest. I bought the AGM because at the time I was gonna go with a Bearing Super Yoder. Couldn't find one.
Sure.
So I ended up buying the AGM, and it's been a good scope, but I have had one issue. I was like, I don't want to have the clutter of a battery bank. I understand that there's a lot of conveniences with them, and I was just burning through CR123s.
Sure.
One of the negatives to that is that they don't have, like, Pulsar has a lot of proprietary rechargeable batteries. iRay, same thing. So you don't have to spend the money on that if you don't want to run a battery bank. Early this season, I cannot get my batteries will work, doesn't matter which brand. And so when I would shoot my firearm, which it's a 224, it's hardly any recoil, especially when it's in a tripod, the unit would shut off. Like the terminals would disconnect.
Sure.
So I called them and I talked to them, and they obviously, you can send it in, but I'm like, yeah, I'm coyote hunting like every weekend, man.
Yeah.
So I put electrical tape around it, read a whole bunch of forums, still having issues. So like I went to a battery bank, and I had one set up anyway, and like it, especially when it's cold, it's nice, but just a bummer for that scope that I have. Like,
right.
I'm not sure where or what happened, if maybe the springs got weak inside of the compartment or something, but even just a little recoil. And the other thing that's weird, Jamie, is like, I'm like, it's happened, and I turned it on, there's a coyote sitting there dead, and I'm like, well, what the heck's going on? I'm like, hammer fist the buttstock.
Yep.
And it 10 times more recoil than like what the gun does, and it doesn't go off. So
Sure.
I have no idea what's going on with it, but it's like when I discharge the gun, like it just kills it. So,
Yeah.
But I'm running a battery bank, no issues.
Sure. Yep. And it's probably spring related, or the actual door that closes on that one is actually a hinged.
Yep.
And it screws in.
Yep.
You may have some bad contacts on that side as well too. Or it could be circuit board related as well too, but you just have to send that in and have it checked. And when we talk different brands out there, one of the things that I highly recommend to everybody is really research the warranties that these different manufacturers have.
Yep.
First of all, we are taking a computerized piece of equipment out. A lot of people will tell me, well, why does it have to have the best warranty? Because are you selling a piece of junk here or what? That's not the case, but we are taking a computerized scope out into the field. And we're putting it on a gun that's going to have heavy recoil. We're taking it out in the harshest conditions.
Seriously.
In most cases. I tell everybody, take your laptop outside in 0-degree weather and then take a hammer and hit it and see how long it lasts. And they're like, well, I'm not going to take a hammer to my scope either. And I'm like, but every time you pull the trigger, it's exactly what you're doing.
Right.
You got
with a
that
light
recoil. Even with a light gun.
Yep.
So warranty is extremely important. Kind of give you a little bit of a rundown on warranties. There's a few companies that do it really well. Some other ones maybe not so great.
Yeah.
But your AGMs out there, it's going to have a 3-year warranty on it. It is not in the print, in the fine print. It is only good for the original owner.
Correct.
Okay. Now our rep says that they will take care of it, but I also not 100% comfortable with something that says it's only good for the original owner. So we typically go with that. It's in their print. They do claim that it is only for the original owner.
Yep.
And again, 3-year warranty, non-transferable. If you step up to a bearing optics, you're going to go to a 4-year warranty that is transferable.
Correct.
And that transferable warranty really comes into play if you ever go to upgrade your scope, if you ever want to sell it, what have you. The next person getting it, we've kind of narrowed it down, and it's kind of a little all over the place. Some guys will trade up every year, but typically we see after about 2 years, guys are looking to trade up to a different scope, or they want to try something different, and they might sell theirs. Anybody that's purchasing that scope from you is going to be rest assured that they've got another 2 years worth of warranty with a 4-year warranty, and it's transferable. So that next person that gets it is just rest assured,
They're
which
protected.
in essence, it's going to increase the value of that used scope when you go to resell it. You jump into some of the I-rays, stuff like that. They do have a 5-year warranty, which is fantastic. It's another year additional to like the bearing optics. And they also do have a 5-day money back guarantee, or I'm sorry, not money back guarantee, but a 5-day guarantee that if they can't fix it, they'll just ship you a new scope. So,
Wow, so super quick.
The speed is the other thing. Bearing Optics, very good at getting scopes back to customers in a timely fashion. I think the longest we've ever had a scope gone to Bearing Optics is like 11 to 14 days.
Shoot, that's
so
quick.
it's a quick turnaround. Their repair is located in California. So for us to ship it from Illinois to California, there's a little bit of shipping time, but that includes the shipping time.
Oh,
so
2 weeks shipped there and back.
And back.
You got
and
6
repair.
days in shipping.
Exactly. So they do a really, really good job. I do have some customers call me up from time to time, and they'll say, gosh, I try to get a hold of Pulsar. I try to get a hold of Bearing. They not return my phone calls. This is the busiest season right now. A lot of these manufacturers are getting prepped to go to SHOT Show. That's a big ordeal. Yep. So, and they're also busy with their, some of the warranty work that does come in. The funny thing is a lot of people say, well, if they can't get back to me or, what have you, then they must have a lot of scopes in there. They must not be very good scopes. Most of these places have maybe 1 or 2 people
Right.
that repair all the scopes from across the country.
So many.
So
it's just, again, in the hunting industry, people think they're these humongous companies because they're dominating necessarily a very small niche industry.
yes,
Yeah. People have to just take a step back that are listening to this podcast and realize 3% of Americans hunt.
right,
They hunt. You
Yes.
know, what percent of them thermal hunt?
right.
What percentage of 3% of Americans thermal hunt? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yep.
So it's not like it's Chevy,
Right.
where Pulsar's got this fleet of customer service agents, you know,
Yep.
or any of the other brands that are out there. But sometimes you got to take a step back. They think, oh, you're this big company, this big dick swinging,
Yeah,
no, we're not. Like,
No, exactly.
We're doing okay, and we're doing good things, but like we don't have 50 people that work with us. Most of them don't even have 20.
sure.
You know. So
Yep.
anyway, Pulsar I know has a transferable warranty as well.
They do have a transferable warranty. They are only 3-year.
Yep.
However, I always, try to put everybody at ease with Pulsar because they say, well, it's only a 3-year warranty versus Bearing Optics is 4 and iRay's 5 and Envision's 5 and Trigicon's 5. But what Pulsar does is a little bit different. First of all, you're going to send it back to Cellmark, which is in Texas. They're going to do the repair right there. They're going to send it back to you. If you send in a scope that doesn't have, it is not able to be repaired or say it's discontinued,
This is the big
because
one.
it seems to be a 3-year turn with a lot of these manufacturers right now. They will actually upgrade you to the next best scope within your spec range. So, for example, if you send in a 384, you're going to get a 384 back,
Right.
but it could be the latest version.
And that actually happened to one of my friends. They
Yeah.
bought one used. It started to act up. They sent it back, and he's like, dude, they sent me the brand new one.
Yes.
He's like, this is crazy.
And when they send you the brand new one,
The warranty.
the warranty starts all over again.
That's what he said. He's like,
Yeah.
this is crazy.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep. That's good customer service.
right. Yeah.
And that is really where, the rubber meets the road is how quickly can they get the stuff back to you? Any of these manufacturers will also tell you, hey, if you have a problem with a scope, like your situation where it's just on the CR123 batteries, you can actually add the external battery pack and get by, right?
Right.
A lot of them will tell you, hey, wait till the summertime when it's a little bit slower here, you're not hunting.
Yep.
Send it in at that time, we'll take care of it.
and that's exactly what the rep told me.
Yeah, so that is definitely a very nice feature of the warranties out there. I'm again probably not the biggest fan of the AGM warranty. They also do seem to be a little bit slower getting product back, especially this time of year.
Sure.
I've
You're
seen
telling
scopes.
me I've got crap. No.
I'm not.
I'm
I'm trying to sell you into a new scope.
yeah. You're probably.
No,
Don't bring all of them out.
Yeah, no, but and again, like I said, I'll probably get bashed for saying some of the things about
Dude.
some of the different manufacturers. But like I said, we sell probably Bearing Optics, Pulsar, and iRay. Probably 30-1 of the AGM stuff.
Yep.
And we still have far less problems with those products than we do some of the others. So,
So rapid fire here, quick. Of the list, I want you to start off with the least, not the least favorable, right? Like the ATN, I'm just going to say is at the bottom.
yep.
And then go through to the very best that you think's out there.
Yeah, so I would, for starting with the least, ATN, AGM would be second. Bearing Optics, very good warranty, very good company.
Getting into the mid-tier now.
Getting into the mid-tier, again, just because iRay has the 5-year warranty and the 5-day guarantee, I would go with them. Envision is going to be 5-day, Trigicon as well.
So Trigicon above Envision.
Trigicon, not necessarily above Envision. I would say that they're equal.
Okay.
I will tell you that Envision will typically get their stuff, shipped to them and back, repaired. I've heard as little as a week.
Wow.
So they do a very good job with that. Trigicon's going to be a little bit different. Again, Trigicon does sell to the civilian market still. I don't know for how much longer. I've heard rumor that they are going to go just law enforcement and military as well. Right now, they do cater to the military.
Sure. And I mean, rightfully so.
That is their biggest, purchaser of their scopes, and
Well,
I don't
not only
blame them at all.
thermals, but other, right? That's something
Exactly.
else to think about. Envision, to my knowledge, only does thermals.
That's all they do.
Where
Correct.
Trigicon has a very diverse umbrella of what they really have for product offering.
Correct.
So, okay. So at the very top, what would you say the best brand, if you're listening to this, you're like, I've saved up my pennies, I got my Christmas bonus. Like, what would you say is the brand, not the scope, that you would be looking at?
Brand, boy, it gets tough because, again, it really comes down to what type of hunting you're doing,
Sure,
to what the best scope is going to be for your.
So there really isn't a
needs.
standout brand. There's like the top two. It
I will
sounds
tell
like
you
Trigicon, Envision,
my
iRay.
standout brands right now. I got to tell you, Bearing Optics. If you're looking for the best 640 for the money, Super Yoder is just a great scope. They make that in 3 different versions right now.
Yep.
They've got a 1.5 that gets down into that just 3,500-ish range
for a 640.
So you for a 640, and so you can get into a 640 for the price of a 384. But you're going to have a lighter base mag.
Right.
They make it in a 2.0, and then also that's the base magnification, and then another base magnification, a 3.0 with a 50 millimeter lens on it. So for coyote hunting, that Super Yoder 3.0 with the 50 millimeter for $45.95, you can't really get a better scope in the 640 range.
No.
Now, are there other scopes out there that have a laser rangefinder on it, different features? Yeah, there's some other standouts there. But Bearing Optics, Pulsar for sure, iRay has really stepped up their game over the years. Are really great scopes. If you want to talk getting into the super high end, you're going to talk the iRay RS75, which just recently came out. You're going to talk Trigicon, and you're also going to talk probably the Envision. Envision does produce probably the best picture that I've seen. And it does have the laser rangefinder with it. It's a great scope. It is on the larger side, and it is a little bit heavy. So those are some factors to consider as well too. But in general, probably has the best picture of any of the scopes out there. But you're also talking that $9,500 range as well too, where again, the Super Yoder for $4,500. You'd be probably pretty hard pressed to, see a huge difference.
Right.
But if you are kind of looking for the ultimate quality and money's not a factor, yeah, absolutely go with the Envision XRF and go from there. The Trigicons used to be very, very popular in the industry, but they've over the last, I'd say 2 years, have really fallen off the scene. It used to be if you're coyote hunting and you don't have a Trigicon, you ain't got nothing.
Yep.
But the one problem with the Trigicons is they have not increased their technology much over the years.
Right. And they're expensive units.
They're very expensive units. But I will tell you what you are paying for is a scope that is made in the U.S. with foreign components. But it is made in the U.S. and it does go through an immense amount of testing before each individual scope goes out the door. And that's what you're paying for.
Sure.
If you take a Trigicon, I will tell you, I think you could run that thing over with a tank and it would still.
And that's why they have
work.
the military contract.
And that's why they have a military contract. Exactly.
Right.
The other thing is, and a lot of people say, well, how come they haven't done this? Or how come they haven't done that? How come they haven't added a laser rangefinder? Well, it becomes a training issue for the military to have to go back and retrain all the military personnel on that particular scope. So they like to keep with the same thing. And that's kind of, if you will, has probably hindered Trigicon from advancing forward a little bit in the industry. But we don't sell a whole lot of Trigicons anymore.
Nope. I mean, it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, especially when you look at the marketing that's around it.
Sure.
It's all I'm seeing is like you said, Bearing, Pulsar, iRay, and like the Halo are like the dudes that are killing 100 coyotes a year.
Yep.
Yep. So before we get into, this is a good opportunity. I want to talk about some components that can make your thermal better, but like, let's get into like best overall and kind of best budget? This is really the number one question I think listeners are tuning in for. They wanted to hear the specs, and now we're talking, you kind of hinted on this, but the best scope, money's not an issue. You're a trust fund baby, right?
Yeah.
Like, best scope, best scanner. Hit us with it and why.
Yep. Well, I got to tell you, the best image quality that I've ever seen out of a scope is the new iRay RS75. It is an $18,000 scope. Yeah. It is the first of its kind, if you will. It is a 1280. And it's just an exceptionally great picture. Is it for everybody? Absolutely not. It is, again, cream of the crop, top of the line. They're getting the biggest bang, the biggest amounts of money for particular scope, because they're the only ones out there that have the 1280.
Do you think anybody will come out with a 1280 now? Do you think somebody's going to try to catch them?
I think that anybody that doesn't try to increase technology and move forward is going to be the companies that fall off of the list.
Sure.
There's some companies out there that have had a little bit of a rough time coming out with their laser rangefinder models and stuff like that. And we've definitely noticed a slowdown in some of their sales.
If you're not keeping up.
If you're not keeping up, you're probably going to end up falling to the back of the pack.
Right.
You're going to get left behind. It's just like, go out deer hunting with the latest and greatest bow. They progress every year and they come out with something new. You got to make the decision. Is it worth upgrading to that or not? But I think the 1280 is here to stay. And I think, they will continue to improve even beyond the 1280.
So you're selling 1280s.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yep. We do have the RS75. It is actually one of the scopes I brought here for you today.
I'm excited to look through it, man. I'm excited but nervous. Because it's like if once I look through it, I'll never not be able to see. You know what I mean?
I will tell you, one of the adages in the thermal industry is if you can't afford it, don't look through it.
Right.
So
okay. So $18,000 that iRay magic machine. It's made with panda and unicorns.
Sure.
So now, what about the scanner? Number one scanner out there.
Number one scanner is it's a little bit subjective because you're going to talk about monoculars that have a laser rangefinder or they don't. So that's going to be a big difference. So my opinion is going to be probably I'm still using a Pulsar XP50 Helion.
Okay.
It's a great unit. I'll tell you, I'm using the original version of the XP50. They've came out with 2 new versions since then. As far as image quality goes, they're going to be really good, but they are also heavy. They're big. They're bulky.
So what's the difference between that one and the Pro?
So the difference in the Pro is they go to that millikelvin, which is a 25 net D millikelvin.
Yep, what you were talking about.
I will tell you that the screens are a little bit brighter in them. They're a little bit easier to see, and your detection range is a little bit better with those as well.
For the Pro.
For the Pro.
Okay.
Yep,
Got
exactly.
It. And that's a 5,000. I mean, what?
4,000. Yep. So 3,999 range for a monocular. I would tell you the best unit I think out there right now with a laser rangefinder on it is the Pulsar XG 35. It's a smaller, more compact unit, but again, advantage laser rangefinder.
Right.
So that is a fantastic unit. Bearing Optics makes a fantastic unit as well. It's the Phenom 640 or Phenom. Some people call it Phenom. Some people call it Phenom.
Yep.
Yeah. That is a great unit. You're looking at like $31.99 for that particular.
Pretty economical then.
Very, very economical. And go from there. So again, 640. Great scanners. A lot of people out there will do a 384 scanner, even if they have a 640, because, kind of the mentality out there is, well, all I'm doing is scanning and I'm just looking for a heat signature and then I'm going to jump into my gun.
Sure.
The reverse psychology on that is that you are going to be in your thermal monocular a lot more. Right. You're going to be in it probably 95% of the time. You're only going to get into your scope basically to pull the trigger.
Sure.
So some people want that better clarity on the monocular, but that's always something that we always recommend people give us a call so that we can kind of walk through what they already have and what's going to be the next best thing for them and go from there. So, but yeah, those two units, and I'm sure you want to go to a middle range.
That's what I was going to say. Cause I had on here a budget, which is like, so my bracket for this was a scope under 2,500. That's like what I would call middle range. And that's maybe not justified as a middle range. This is totally up to you. Cause I know that there are some scopes that are like in the 35 or you tell me what would you consider a middle range? 3,500?
Probably middle range is going to be your $3,000 to $4,000 range, maybe $4,500 range.
Is that a 640 still? Or are we talking 384?
So if you're going to go to the middle range, the 384s that are out there that are really, really good, it is really, really tough to beat like a Super Hogster.
Yes.
Scope,
yep.
Especially for coyote hunting, it's a 2.9 base mag, 384, 288 scope. It ranges from your 32 to 3,500, depending on which mount you get with it.
Yep.
Some of the different accessories that go along with those. We'll talk about the accessories as well, but those are just really good scopes that have been out in the industry for a long period of time now. They're tried and true. They have done on the Super Hogster, they did an upgrade to it. It's now called the A3, which adds a few little features to it as well. But again, just a tried and true scope that really does well. In the middle range as well too, for a 640, you're going to be looking at probably like your Super Yoders, that type of thing. Your pulsars, anything in an XQ is going to be a 384. So those are going to be kind of the middle of the road.
Yep.
Your pulsars typically are going to be a little bit higher in price because of the features that they do have. Again, going back to that audio.
Right.
Pulsar, I will tell you, if you're an app user and you want to marry up the scope to the app, they by far have the best app in the industry. Really nice feature is that when you're in the app with a Pulsar scope, you can control anything inside that scope right from the app. So if you want to change even your magnification, like if you want to go up to 2x, 3x, 4x, you can do that right from an iPad or your smartphone. You can change your contrast settings, your brightness settings, all of that different stuff right through the app. You can even upgrade your scope if they come out with a new software. You can do that right through the Pulsar app.
That's very nice.
That is very nice. I know you mentioned earlier that you upgraded your software in your AGM, which is a process of hooking it up to the computer, downloading a file from AGM,
turning it on, turning it off.
Exactly. It's a little sketchy because if you do mess up the process, you're probably going to have to send it in and have the software rebooted on it. With Pulsar, when you marry your scope up to the app, it will download all the information from that scope, serial numbers, so on and so forth. And when you go back to the internet, it will recognize that, hey, you've got XYZ scope. We need to do an update to that. It will automatically download the update. And then when you go to Wi-Fi to your scope the next time, it will ask you if you want to apply that update. The one thing that's really nice with Pulsar is their Wi-Fi is really fast as well too. It takes just a few. The longest update I think I've ever seen in a Pulsar scope was maybe 3-4 minutes.
Yeah. So to talk about that, like I did my update and I was trying to troubleshoot right with the thing. And the first one said update failed, retry. And I'm like, and the writing was upside down. I'm like, oh no. Like, what do you mean? Cause I walked away. I like sat there and watched it for like 10 minutes. I'm like, do I turn it off? What do I do? Like, so I walked away and I came back and like, it said that. So I turned it off, unplugged it, deleted, and luckily no issues. Yeah. I was like, seriously, like,
concerned that you're gonna have to send it in and you're now without a scope.
For who knows, 2 weeks, 3 weeks,
Yes.
You're at the mercy of the warranty. And I'm like, now it's the holiday season. It was right before the holiday season. I'm like, oh, this is going to suck.
Yeah. I've seen some of the updates on the AGMs take upwards of 45 minutes to an hour. And there's a lot of things that can go wrong in a 45 minutes to an hour.
Right. I
doing
think what
update.
had happened is my computer screen shut off.
Sure.
And it's set to half an hour,
Yeah.
for screensaver. And
Yep.
anyway.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of people, because of the length of time that it takes to update the AGMs, they will think that something froze up or locked up or it wasn't taking the update, and they'll unplug them in the middle of the update, and then you've got a problem. So, like I said, with the Pulsar, they make it a lot easier with their app, because they use a proprietary software that is their own, and they use their own processors. They do a really good job with, the app and so forth, which is really nice to use.
So now let's talk about best scope, $2,500. Like a guy's just getting into it. Hey man, this is what I got to spend. What do you
Sure.
What do you recommend?
Yeah. A lot of times, just jokingly, we recommend you save up a little bit more money. But, if you are looking for a budget scope out there, you can get into the AGM. They make a 256. They've got a 19 millimeter and a 25 millimeter 256. That gets down into the $1,000, $1,200 range. Really good scopes. I would also, hope that when people do call, we try to get them into, a better quality scope. The Bearing Optics Vibe scope is very good as well too. They make that in a couple different versions. They've got a 1.4 base mag, and then they've got a 2.0 as well. And that's going to be in your $2,500, maybe $2,600 range.
Yep. Right in this
and
range.
go from there. So, but you can go as low as $1,000 up to $2,500. The 256s, it depends on what you're doing with it again, and
I think that's the hitting the nail on the head. And the other thing too, and I appreciate my friends out west, but they're like, this isn't something you kind of like start up and dabble. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
If you're going to do this, you need to do it.
Yeah.
And I didn't even go all the way, right? I kind of wish, talking to you now, I would have just waited for that Yoder. But,
resale value is really important, because a lot of people call me up and they say, hey, I've never done this before, but I want to get into it, and I don't know how much I'm going to do it. And you'll see a lot of people jump in. Some people go, gosh, I only use this thing 2 or 3 times the whole year. The other people will be using it 2 to 3 times a week. If you start out with a scope, the one thing that I highly recommend is at least get into something that's got a transferable warranty. Number one. Number two, it's going to hold its resale value much better, so that when you go to sell it, you're not going to lose as much. And go from there. And then if you want to upgrade, you can definitely do that as well too. Here at Dark Knight Outdoors, we do take trade-ins as well too.
Yep.
So you can always give us a call if you want to do a trade-in. I do tell everybody you would do much better selling it on your own, because it's not something that we're going to put on our particular rifle and go out and hunt with. We've already got our scopes, right?
So you're looking to take it.
We're going to take it and we're going to sell it. And when we bring those scopes in, we got to make sure that they're up to, everything's working correctly on them.
Because
we
your
go
name's
through
on
and
it now.
we clean off the videos off of them, and which everybody forgets to do. And then we reset them back to the factory condition and go from there. So usually on trade, can we give them as much as what you can sell it outright? Probably not, but it also takes a lot of hassle out of it as well too. So
So quickly then, scanner, $2,500, $1,500.
When you get down into the scanner $2,500 range, I'm going to say probably the best one on the market today is, I would go with a Pulsar Axion 2 XQ35. Has the laser rangefinder on it, and that unit comes in at $2,495. So it's a great scope, great monocular.
A good number too.
Yeah. It just... Overall, it's a very popular seller. It's a great unit. Again, it's Pulsar. Pulsar on their Axions, they use a metal housing on it, so it feels like a quality piece of equipment.
Yeah.
There are some other ones out there in the industry. AGM is toyed around with fusion technology where you can overlay.
I don't understand that. We don't need to get into the worms of it.
Because
it does both night vision and thermal, right?
Yes.
I'm like, what?
So it is kind of a night vision that they overlay the heat sources onto it is a great concept, but it is not, it just hasn't made it mainstream. It's not a big feature that people look for.
No, you're going to do thermal or you're going to do night vision.
Exactly. Yeah. In that particular unit, it's a little bit larger. It ends up having 3 lenses on it because you've got the night vision, the thermal, and then
your
basically
IR.
Yeah. Well, they also put a laser rangefinder in that particular unit.
Yeah.
So you've got that as well. But again, the AGM product, it feels a little more plasticky. It's a little bit larger, a little bit heavier, not quite as good a battery system in it, so on and so forth. So
okay, and then budget, a budget scanner, $1,500.
Budget scanner. I'm gonna probably drop one that maybe you've never heard of before. It is actually called a PARD. It's PARD.
Okay.
New company on the scene. They're not a new company overall. They've been in Europe for quite a few years, but this year's their first venture into the U.S. They are building some really cool stuff, not only in monoculars, but also in scopes as well, and coming out at a fantastic price point. We've had quite a few of their scopes in already. There was some things that we think needed to be tweaked on them a little bit. So we actually had those sent back, and they're in the process of tweaking some of the different things that we thought needed to be improved on them and go from there. But I think they're an upcoming product that's going to probably sweep really sweep the United States.
It'll probably be the killer of ATN.
It very well could be.
Those kind of price points that you're talking about.
Yeah, the price points on some of they do have a scope out right now that is called a 6245 laser rangefinder. So it's got a laser rangefinder in it. It's got the 62 stands for the 640.
Sure.
And then the 45 is a 45 millimeter lens on it. And it, first of all, has a laser rangefinder. It has a red dot laser integrated into the housing, has a flashlight in it. It is an all aluminum housing, comes with a ballistics calculator, which is probably the first we've seen in a thermal.
Sure.
But you can program in your ballistics of your bullet. And then when you hit the laser rangefinder, you can hit the button again and it will actually put an X on the screen where you need to aim.
Whoa. Kind of like the Burris eliminator that was around forever.
Exactly. So some really cool technology that they put into those. They did have a momentary glitch with the ballistics calculator. One of the reasons they're still working on that a little bit, but I know they are going to get it perfected and go from there. But it's kind of the first of its kind. They are great units, and they're about half the size of a Super Yoder or an AGM Rattler.
Wow, with all that in it.
With all that in it.
Wow.
The other thing that it does as well, and maybe I'm going to kind of backtrack here on features a little bit, but it does record. It does have audio with the recording, and it sounds good.
Okay.
And then it also has shot activated recording. So shot activated, yes. So shot activated recording is one of those things that if you've been out hunting before, if you're like me and Bill, we always forget to hit the record button.
Or if
we get done and we're like, gosh, I wish I would have recorded that. Or you hit the recording way early, and then you've got a whole lot of dead space that you have to go back and kind of edit trim it out. And when you go to download it, it takes forever to download because you've got a 20-minute, video.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah. And so, but the shot activated recording is really nice. So when it feels the recoil, it will actually, it records on a DVR type system.
So it pre-records.
It pre-records, and then when it feels the shot, you can set it to how many minutes you want it to go back to the prior, so that you actually get the coyote coming in, and then you get the shot, and then you can actually preset how long you want that overall video to be, or you can shut it off manually as well too. So
that is so cool.
Yeah, so there's a few companies that have come out with the shot activated recording, mostly on on digital night vision products, but on thermal, the AGM adder, they did come out with it. I've heard out there in the industry that people that are using it say it's about 50-50, 50% of the time it works, 50% of the time it doesn't. With the PARD scope, it seems to work very, very well.
So for me, like, I'm a video guy, right? So taboo if you don't hit record.
Yeah.
But it's happened twice now and it's probably because I don't have a scanner, but I'm doing the whole shuffle with the tripod, and then all of a sudden I was like, boom, there's one like 50 yards screaming in. Absolutely. You don't have time to hold it for 3 seconds. Literally. Right. It happened the other night when it was snowing really hard. Like, I turned and, I mean, it was crazy, Jamie. I shot that coyote from like here to the door.
Sure.
Like, and that's the other thing, talking to people that I take people out. Coyotes don't respond the same at night as they do during the day.
Right.
The biggest thing is like they don't stop near as easily. Coyotes during the daytime, when you call them, you whistle, you howl, you growl, like they'll usually put on the brakes. And more times than not at night, like it seems like they do not want to stop. And maybe it's just me or the style of calling I do, but
that's where most people start whistling a little bit, or kind of going, woo,
hey.
Yeah.
And then they don't stop. So that coyote, I never shot one that close. My crosshairs and barrel hadn't met up yet, so I pretty much unzipped him from the belly down, and and then I turned and here's another one coming in.
Yeah.
But it's just addicting, man. So
and anytime your heart starts racing like that when you see a coyote coming in, it is really hard to remember to hit that record button. Your mind is on other things.
Or I've done this before where you think you're hitting the record button, you shut the unit off.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And then you're like, oh shit. Like
power
on.
Yeah. That is not good.
I have 100% done that.
Yeah. So that shot activated recording is a new and upcoming feature that I think is going to be extremely popular.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah.
PARD.
So PARD. Yep. It's a new company where we've been working with them.
And you're a distributor. Yeah.
We are. We've actually got quite a few units out there right now. But there was a few things we wanted them to work on. So they went back to the drawing board. One of the things that they did when they first came out, for example, is they only had a 2-year warranty.
Sure.
And we were talking to them and they said, yeah. And I said, well, we need to talk about this warranty because that's just probably not going to fly. They turned around and said, well, that's kind of the industry standard. And I did not realize this, but in Europe and Canada, even, if you buy a Pulsar product in Canada, it's a 1-year warranty.
Whoa.
Right. So it kind of goes by different laws that different countries have as well, too. And 2 years is actually the standard in Europe.
Wow.
So when they came to the U.S., that was one of the adjustments that they needed to make, but they have made it a 3-year warranty now.
Sure. So that's pretty cool. They must be working pretty close with you then.
Right.
Do they not have many vendors? I mean,
they don't currently right now.
Good thing for you.
Yeah. It is something that we saw at SHOT Show last year. They didn't even have a booth at SHOT Show last year, but I met up with a couple of the representatives and they're like, hey, you want to see something really cool? And I'm like, oh geez, it's going to take a lot to see something that's really cool. But when I saw their scopes, half the size, all aluminum, laser rangefinder built in, the shot activated recording. A lot of people ask me about the red dot laser. Like, what do you do with a red dot laser?
Dude,
it is really handy.
The recovery.
Exactly.
I have a mounted laser on my gun because I have a green pick laser. You kill the coyote. And again, a guy that, because this is very expensive, so I don't have the scanner to just walk right to it.
Right.
Even with a headlamp, it's dark. You shot it in the dark.
Yep.
You lock the gun in the saddle, turn the laser on, and you just follow the beam.
Yep. And you follow the beam right out to the coyote, pick it up, and away you go.
You walk the beam back to your gun.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is a really nice feature. I've had a few people say, well, I've been pointing out, because I have a laser rangefinder now,
Sure.
Right in the scope, they will, point at a hillside or something and just say, hey, that hillside's, 300 yards out or whatever, and go from there. So it is a really handy feature, which at first when I saw it, I was kind of like, wow, what do we need a red dot laser for? They also do put a flashlight on the particular unit just because they're using the same housing that they used for the digital night vision, which was your IR light. Yeah. So they just put a clear bulb in it, but it's another feature that's nice to have. And again, it runs off of an 18650 battery. So a decent
Common. Yep.
power source and very common. And then just a great scope overall. Their top end scope comes in at $42.99. So with a laser rangefinder and all those different features. So it is definitely something that I think that will take the industry by storm here very, very soon. Once they get some of the small kinks worked out of the scope.
Get their feet under them.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So now, lastly, let's talk about some things that you guys manufacture. Throw levers, lens covers, battery packs, and tripods, like the complementary secondary, tertiary things when you're considering a thermal.
Yeah. Yep. When Bill and I decided that we were going to get into the industry, that was one of the key things that we were frustrated with, is just finding accessories for these scopes. Yep. A simple throw lever.
Big game changer, man.
Yeah. All these thermal scopes are a manual focus. So you're constantly moving the focus for your different ranges and so forth. In just by nature, the focus is tough to turn.
It's tight.
It's tight.
Or you have gloves on more times than not.
Yeah. And a lot of people say, gosh, why do they make these things so tight? Well, they're cinching down a lens on the front of a body of a scope that they have to tighten tight enough to keep it waterproof against the seal. So, when they do that, the downfall is that sometimes the focus ring becomes tough to turn.
Sure.
Again, if you have gloves on or what have you, it makes it tough to turn. So we actually manufacture the focus levers or focus ring for almost every scope out there that you can put them on. We do make eye cups as well. These things get very bright in the screen. So when you turn that on and you have your scope on and maybe you're scanning with your monocular, that light's shining back on you.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're hog hunting, probably not a big deal. But if you're coyote hunting, it can be a very big deal.
Yes.
So we actually manufacture a eye cup that has a shutter in it. So when you push your eye against it, it actually pops open.
Oh, nice.
And then when you pull your eye away from it, it actually shuts so that light's not bleeding back on you. Plus it also helps protect the diopter side of the lens and go from there. So when we make those for just about every scope out there as well too.
No kidding.
Yeah. Few other things that we actually manufacture in-house, cable management clips. So if you start talking about battery packs, we do make an external battery pack that is a 10,000 milliamp. We use Anchor batteries. We actually use a couple different battery manufacturers, but PowerAd is a little bit on the cheaper side for price. Your Anchor batteries are probably the best in the industry. We sell about 600 10,000 milliamp Anchor battery packs a year.
Dang.
So there's a lot of them out there.
And they're handy, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be honest. I'm a gun geek. I built my gun. It's got Cerakote. Looks really cool. And I'm like, I just wanted it to look clean.
Yes.
But after I've been forced to switch to the battery bank, it is handy. Because that battery bank, especially like a 10,000 one, like you're talking, it'll last multiple days depending on how hard you're hunting and the weather conditions.
You put that on like your Rattler, for example, or a Super Yoder, Super Hogster, whatever. We've got guys that are getting 2.5 days straight runtime out of them. If you're in a 2-day coyote contest, that really is handy.
Nice.
Yeah. Now a lot of friends of ours go out and they will hunt the 2 days straight. I can't do that anymore. I got to have a little bit of a break in there.
Hunting in the day and the night.
But when you get back and you're tired and the last thing you want to do is remember to charge your batteries in your scope.
Or you forget.
Yeah. I usually leave it in the truck anyway and then go back out. I want that thing to last. And the Anchor battery pack systems that we produce work really well for that. We don't make the Anchor batteries, of course. We buy those. It's like any other cell phone charger. battery bank that you can purchase. But what we do is we actually manufacture a housing that goes around that battery that you can attach it to your rifle, either with M-LOK, key mod, or to a Picatinny rail.
Yep.
So it just makes it real clean and neat. Our battery packs do come with a magnetic cable as well. There's a lot of people out there that despise the magnetic cable, but if you use it correctly, it does work extremely well, and it does prevent you from breaking off the battery port on the side of the scope.
Correct.
So that is one of the most common repairs that we see out there is somebody will put a hard 90 USB cable into the side of the scope, and then they snag it when they're taking it in and out of the truck, or they bump it, what have you. With the magnetic cable, it does drop off. We do highly recommend that you do leave a set of a good CR123 batteries in the scope as well. Most scopes out there will just revert back to its main power source if that magnetic cable does drop off.
I didn't know that. I wonder if my Rattler does that.
Yeah, it will automatically switch back and forth. But again, one of the things that you may experience with the magnetic cable is recoil. It may come disconnected just momentarily. It doesn't actually fall off, but it may come disconnected momentarily, and then your scope goes out. But if you do have a good set of CR123 batteries in the scope, you won't have those issues. So
even if you have the batteries, and even if it disconnects, it doesn't even stop recording. Yeah,
and now your CR123s are going to last a lot longer. You can get 2-3 months out of them versus
1 half day.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, but I do like the external battery pack. It's probably I run it all the time.
That's what I was going to say. I've been forced to, and now it's like I've become to enjoy it. I mean, as much as I like guns that look nice, this is a utilitarian gun. It's there for a purpose.
Well, and I built up a 224 Valkyrie. I'll tell you, I'm not real big in the different calibers of guns and so forth. Bill's really our expert in all of that. But he built up a 224 Valkyrie, and we had a lot of really good luck. He was knocking them dead, and I was still using the 223, and I was having a lot of runners. So I switched up to the 224. When I built that rifle, I for the first time, I kind of went all out and built up. I got like $3,000 invested in the thing. It's not hard, man. And that was me building it.
Same thing with mine. I got a carbon fiber BSF barrel on it. I've got a really nice BCG, the handguard, the stock. I mean, but the gun, I reload all my stuff, and like that gun's shooting like 3/4 minute out of an autoloader, which is pretty good. Yeah,
I put the carbon fiber proof research barrel on it. I've got the carbon fiber handguard. Cryptic coatings,
cool.
bolts. Yeah,
it
is a super nice gun.
That was my last question. Okay, I don't want to cut you off, but what are you running? Like, what's your setup? You told me about your XP50.
Yep.
And I don't know if this is still the gun you're running or not, but to tie into that.
So the XP50 is the monocular that I'm using. For the scope on my gun, I'm a little bit torn what I'm going to use this year for sure. So Bill, being the product specialist, he gets to use whatever he wants.
Oh, nice.
And he gets to take what it's a perk of the job, right? Well, he took the XRF. So I probably would have put the Envision XRF on there, but since he's using that, I am going to probably run the iRay Bolt 640 that does not have a laser rangefinder, but that is the unit that has a 2560 screen in it, and it's a very, very nice traditional style scope. Now, if through the season, if PARD gets some of their units back over to us, I'm definitely going to be switching over to a PARD to get some time behind that and some experience and get out and run those. That would be a 640 by 480 45 millimeter lens with all the extra features that they do have. A lot of people say, well, really, you're not running the 1280 iRay? Well, no, I'm in the business, but I still can't even afford to hunt with that particular unit. So it is a great unit. I have not actually hunted with it, but just compared it to other scopes under the same conditions at the same time to see what the clarity looks like on it and so forth. And just a really, really sweet scope, obviously, but the overall cost of that unit is pretty high.
It's So and then your 224, is that your Coyote gun?
224 Valkyrie is what I'm using. Used to use and it's an AR style.
Yep.
I don't know why I prefer the AR style. A lot of bolt guns out there. Love the bolt guns as well too.
Yep.
But for me, just that auto loader it's nice.
So a learning curve for me again. I'm a bolt lover for sure,
Yeah.
and I damn sure love like ARs. I build a ton of them.
Sure.
But I originally it started with a bull barrel 223. I'm like, I can cook up around and get this shooting really well. Like it's popular and it worked great. But like you said, even when I'd hit a Coyote perfect, every once in a while I'd have them run because I was reloading with a 53 grain VMAX. And I was like, man, okay. The defining factor though was when you start calling in multiples, like doubles or triples. Like, it's a lot different, because I coyote hunt during the day. I have a 204 Ruger, and I love that gun, man.
Sure.
And it's a bolt action gun, and when you call in a double during the day, you have to get out of the scope to a certain degree to work that action.
Sure.
Well, during the day, you can follow that animal out of the scope. At night, you can't.
Right.
So you work that action, then you get in and you're automatically into scan mode. The game changer for me was being able to stay in that optic, like hit the first one and immediately get on to the next coyote.
Right.
You don't ever leave it, you know, and that was what eventually sent me down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But a couple, I know really popular calibers are like 243 is big. It's around. It's been there forever. Guys are running AR-10 platforms. Robert is running a 243 short mag. It's crazy. It's like a WSM, so it's even faster.
Yeah.
And he's shooting like a 55 grain bull, and it's almost like 4,000 feet a second. It's crazy. Shane's using a 22 Creedmoor. That's getting a lot of popularity right now.
Sure.
I'm trying to think what else. What are some other popular ones?
I'm actually using a 224 Valkyrie.
That's what I'm using too.
Yeah.
75 grain boat tail hollow point.
I'm actually using a 60 grain.
Yep.
But the 60 grain seems to do, it goes in, does a lot of damage, typically dumps all that energy right into
Same
the
thing with
coyote,
mine. I've never had one exit.
We have, exactly. And we've not had any runners either.
Nope.
So,
knock on wood, man.
Right.
And I had a buddy go out and he hit the coyote. I mean, it was close, 75 yards, but it was a middle of the middle, man. I mean,
Sure.
Like, and that coyote, I've never seen it happen before. He hit it, knocked it over, it picked its head up, and it whined, and it was dead. I was like, you need to shoot him again, but
Sure.
Man, I'm super impressed with that caliber.
Yeah. I built mine to be a little bit more lightweight. Weight was a big consideration for me just because when you are carrying, your gun, your tripod, your collar, all that stuff, it gets to be a lot.
Oh, yeah.
So weight was definitely a huge consideration for me, and that's why I didn't go to the larger, AR-10 platform.
Yep.
Just for the weight savings.
I don't think you need it. I mean,
No.
like some of the calibers that are out there, I was tossing up between the 224 and the 6.8 Grendel.
Yeah.
The, kind of one and the same, but not. I mean, the 6.8's heavier.
Yep.
Projectiles, but honestly, I could not get mine to shoot factory ammo to save my life. I don't know if you fought that at all or not, but oh my gosh.
On the Valkyrie or the 6.8?
The Valkyrie.
Okay, the Valkyrie. No, I'm actually shooting factory ammo through the proof research barrel, and it seems to be working extremely well.
That's. I mean, I
kind
bought,
of a tack driver.
I bought all the match grade ammo, the Hornady, the Sierra, Federal, and I was like, geez, okay, I messed up somewhere. I'm thinking, you know what I mean? And then so I started reloading and playing around, and I was torn between that or the 55. I was like, how fast do I want to go?
Sure.
Or do I want a little bit more ass to it? So 6, 1.5 a dozen. I mean, you're flattening coyotes just like I am.
Exactly.
So
yep. Even the 223s are still, a great round.
Mm-hmm.
We've had a little bit better luck with, the 60 grain bullets. It is going to get into personal preference, but whether you use a VMAX, style bullet, but they seem to work well. But again, once in a blue moon, you'll get that runner. And if you're in a coyote contest, the last thing you want to do is be chasing down a coyote.
Nope. Dude, those guys are nuts, man. I mean,
right.
Literally, so I talked to you, we had Ozzie Clements on, and like you mentioned Alan Edwards and some other people in the area that are like, I mean, they are the guys that kill coyotes. And it's like, it starts, they got a freaking cooler full of Red Bull. They'll maybe stop at Casey's to like grab a Snickers or piece of pizza. And it's like, they'll hit a stand and they've got so much. That's the other thing. Like these guys that do it, it's like my whitetail hunting. They have all these properties, right?
Sure.
And it's like 15-minute stand, they're out. 15 minutes. They're not waiting to call in the timid one. No, it's like hard chargers, dumping them, grabbing them, picture, go.
Yeah.
Like,
it's
crazy.
Yeah. Alan Edwards and John Gochi, those two guys, they are definitely hunting fools, and they'll stay out for 2 days straight if they have to. And they really go at it. I'm obviously a little heavier set, so I got to take a break. I'm getting older too.
Sure.
There's some guys out there like Ron Moss and stuff like that that they go out and coyote hunt like crazy. They do not shy away if it's a coyote contest. If it's, I think last year, if I remember right, they went out, it might have been 40, 45 mile an hour winds and colder than cold. And they still went out and they still shot coyotes they still had some luck.
They're just animals, man.
Yeah. It's crazy, but you want to make sure you got some good equipment when you're going out there. It just makes it all that much better and a little bit more fun.
Right.
So,
well, is there anything else you want to add, Jamie?
No, I don't think so. I think, kind of summing it up is, what the best scope is or the best monocular for somebody out there. It all depends on your exact situation. And I think, at Dark Night Outdoors, what we pride ourselves on doing is really getting to know exactly what you're doing, what you're hunting, first of all, the types of ranges, the terrain that you're in, and then pairing up the best scope for what you have, or what's going to fit your needs the best. There's a lot of guys out there that, they want certain features, and we can get you into the best scope. We always recommend the best scope, kind of the biggest bang for your buck, if you will, right. Because budget definitely does play into all of these scopes because they are so expensive. One thing that we won't do is, even if we don't have it sitting on the shelf, we will still recommend, hey, this might be the best scope for your situation. Even though they may have to go somewhere else to get it if we're out of stock on it at that particular time, but we don't, we don't just recommend the ones that we're making the most profit on. And I think that's a major differentiator, and where a lot of customers out there really respect Dark Night Outdoors.
Yeah.
Is
you're not pushing. You're not there for the, it's kind of like a term in business. You can get a sale or you can get a customer.
Sure.
There's a big difference, right?
Absolutely.
And you guys, you just mentioned 3 guys in the Quad City area, which we have a huge listener base here. A lot of people know those names.
Sure.
And they trust you when they go and they buy their stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like the other thing that I think is awesome is the open invitation that you put to call. Right when you go to your website, big number there.
Yep.
There is no online message back and forth. People can definitely message you, right?
Yeah.
But get on the phone because you want to know what they're doing and dive into it and have that conversation.
Yeah, I get a lot of people that text us or email us even off of our website, and they ask a few questions, but I will tell you that our general answer almost all the time is please give us a call, because we've got a lot more questions. There's a lot more that goes into it that you may not have thought of. We really try to spend as much or as little time that a customer wants to spend on the phone with us. I love to talk about thermals, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
But at the end of the day, some people call and they get a lot more information that they were really looking for, but it helps them make the right decision for them. I've even had guys call me up and say, gosh, I got a $4,000 budget. What should I do? And they're literally just walking up to the base of a tree and shooting a coon. They're coon hunters.
Right.
You don't need a $4,000. You can get this, and this will work perfectly fine for your situation. So again, the overall best scope out there is the one that fits your budget and fits your hunting needs the best, and that you're going to get the most money out of it if you ever do go to sell it. So, those are some of the key things out there. And, one of the other questions that I get, from coyote hunters, if I upgrade from a 384 to a 640, am I going to, I want to kill more coyotes, so I want to upgrade my scope. Well, I tell you what, 384 scope will kill just as many coyotes as a 640 will. But one thing that does make it a lot more successful is getting that monocular. Getting some type of scanning device that you can scan before you go out in the field, and while you're coming out of the field, all that stuff will actually help you kill more coyotes.
Right.
So monoculars have been extremely popular over the last year and a half, because people are starting to realize, man, scanning with a gun just
Sucks.
is not very fun, and it's a lot of movement.
It is.
And when
people
you have
think you have a sense of allure at night. But
yes.
Two things that I've learned with coyote hunting is, first off, coyotes are always shorter than you by a lot. So at some point in time, even if you're on flat ground, you'll be silhouetted. You can't beat that, right? You can't get around that. And secondly is that you are not bulletproof at night.
Sure.
Like new moon nights, love those. Only come once, twice a month,
Right.
but other than that, you're going to have some type of shadow, going to have some type of image that you're silhouetting or projecting.
Yes.
You have to, like you said, it's a lot more movement when you're spinning around.
Yes.
Versus just pivoting on your hips.
Yep. And noise, movement, stuff like that. If you've got coyotes hanging up at 200 to 300 yards all the time, you got to really take that into consideration. Are they seeing the movement? Are they not quite, comfortable coming in? That's where monocular, when you just are pivoting your head only versus swinging a whole gun around, can really limit that movement down and help you kill more coyotes.
And it's more enjoyable.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some other equipment out there that can help you as well too, like tripods, stuff like that. We do actually manufacture our own tripod. Lots of good tripods out there. But some of that equipment can make it easier for you, but not every situation is good for a tripod either, especially if there's a full moon out or you don't have maybe a set of woods to back up to, so they don't silhouette you so easily.
Right.
There's some different equipment out there that can definitely help you kill more coyotes. And anytime that somebody wants to give us a call, we'll be more than happy to sit down and go over all the options with them. And again, take as much time or as little time as you have. So.
Awesome. Well, once again, Jamie, tell them where they can find you. Give them your number. And thank you so much for taking some time. I learned a whole bunch, and
Good.
Not going to lie, I'm pretty excited to check out what
Sure.
you brought. So,
Absolutely. We'll spend some time behind those. But
Dark Night with an N, right?
Dark Night Outdoors. Yep. With an N. And it's 309-781-8421 is our contact phone number. You can always do some research on our website at darknightoutdoors.com. We do also have a Facebook page for Dark Night Outdoors. And then there is also a thermal buy and sell if you're looking to upgrade or sell one of your current scopes. You can list it there as well.
Perfect. Well, thanks for your time. I cannot wait to check out these thermals.
Hey, take care.